6 Music.
You are now entering parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
The Human League and Love Action, I Believe in Love. I'm Marc Riley and I believe in Bob Hughes.
Oh, mate, too nice. Nice intro, thank you.
It's all right, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. Good to speak to you over from Yorkshire.
Yeah, absolutely. You're really mastering the accent now. It's not taken long, has it?
No, mate, of course. You know what I'm like.
We're looking at sounds here, 3rd of October 1981, and we're indebted again to Saucic Steve, who sent us a whole big bushel of these things.
Thank you, Steve.
Also noticeable here, Mark, bear in mind, late 1981, it's a heyday of the new wave of British heavy metal, and there are metal bands with terrible names everywhere, like Rage and Shaking Street and Arrogant, etc. It's the start of something that was big for a while.
Well, some of the biggest bands in the world came out of it, Def Leppard and Iron Maiden, so all was not lost, but never really my bag. And as we know, it was referred to, particularly by some American people on a documentary, as Nawabum.
That's right. Because it was easier to say, I think. In the news, Spandau Ballet, Landscape, Lynx and Tom Robinson all turned up last week to vote on a motion to change the current laws forcing musicians to re-record their singles for Top of the Pops. The motion was carried unanimously and letters of goodwill were sent from Status Quo, XTC and Camel, to name but a few. The decision to change the ruling must now go through the District Council and then onto the National Executive Committee of the Musicians Union, who will decide what the new procedure will be. It's hoped that the new policy should be implemented by November. It was always like a bit of a strange thing with the BBC and Top of the Pops, wasn't it? Because back in the day, in the 70s, you had to sort of re-record your single and then you could sort of mime to that, a couple of nights later. But now they're looking to mime completely without re-recording the single.
Well, the thing was, the funny thing was that, they did it like even on the old Grey Whistle test, didn't they? So, like when Bowie was on famously, the backing track, you can see that Woody's miming, but Bowie's singing live to the backing track. Then eventually it went all live. But what tickled me most about this story was, don't you think that was a little over-optimistic of Camel to stick the nose in? They were never going to be bothering Top of the Pops, were they?
I was going to say it's a slightly random group. XTC, Status Quo, of course, but Camel, more in hope, I think, than anything else, I think.
Just a strange one. But fair enough, solid Darren.
Yeah, absolutely. And also in the news, Gene Vincent fans will be competing for the title of Gene Genius in a competition being held to discover who knows the most about the rock and roll hero who died 10 years ago this month. The event takes place in October at the New Big Inn Sports Centre, New Big Inn by the Sea. What a nice idea.
New Big Inn by the Sea. I've never heard of that, have you?
No, me neither. That was a new one on me. The Freshies write to inform us that they have a new single and live dates out. Yes, Chris, we do have space for you sometimes. The record Dancing Doctors is released in October via the Raz Pinnacle label, and the Freshies have left RCA despite the chart success that corporation brought them after seeing the boss apparently wearing flared trousers.
Right.
That's one way to sever your connections. The combo play You Missed in Manchester October the 2nd, Manchester Galley on the 4th, with an afternoon show for under-18s on the latter day. As we know, of course, this is Chris Seavey, isn't it?
Yeah, also known as Frank Sidebottom, R.I.P., sadly.
News, Heavy Metal Dream comes true on October the 3rd. Sounds, of course, being sort of big on heavy metal.
Yep.
When a 12-hour sponsored headbang takes place in Portobello Road in Edinburgh, the marathon session comes as part of an all-day rock celebration, which will feature Dead on Arrival on stage, along with all-day rock from DJ Ricky Martin. Prospective head bashers are advised to arrive early, as there is a capacity of only 200, and preference will be given to those being sponsored. There'll also be a prize for the best imaginary guitar poser. It sounds all a little bit too professional for me. Sponsored headbanging?
Yes, it's not the spirit of it, is it, mate?
No, it isn't.
I mean, it's supposed
isn't.
to be in a field with a flag and a cider and not feeling too well. That's as I understand it.
Yeah, amateurish all the way through. And LA Hooker have apparently had an internal rift resulting in the loss of their drummer, who wanted to spend more time with his girlfriend. They consequently now need a new drummer, and anybody interested should call Sean at 01561 6029. It's a novel way of leaving a band.
What the band called?
LA Hooker.
LA Hooker, right, okay, I mean, is that a bit like TJ Hooker? Is it a kind of a...
Possibly, Mark. I should have done some research. New York news here. The Jacksons' two-night stand at Madison Square Garden drew an interesting number of guests, including Andy Warhol, Rachel Sweet, Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger and Katharine Hepburn.
Wow.
Killing Joke's recent stand in New York yielded all the expected Killing Joke invade New York stories. The Wacky Four created reasonable havoc at a college radio station where they behaved obnoxiously and uncooperatively both on air and off, and then refused to leave, generally behaving in a manner that inspired even their own publicist to comment that the whole day has been just like babysitting for really awful children, and I wish that the DJ would really give it to them.
Wow. I tell you what, I mean, if anybody on the day did call them the Wacky Four, then I would expect them to behave badly, wouldn't you? It sounds like, you know, the new Beatles or something, which Killing Joke never were.
No, of course they weren't. They were notorious as well, just for sort of winding up journalists as well, weren't they? Was it Killing Joke who did the maggots trick? You know, a big bucket of maggots behind a radiator?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. In Hollywood, in LA, there is now a group for American parents concerned about the kind of music their children listen to. It's called Parents of Punkers. According to a letter to the Times from the chairman, Parents of Punkers is an organisation whose sole purpose is to help parents whose children are involved in punk. We take no position on what should be the appropriate public policy towards punk. We do, however, believe that the values and behaviours promoted by punk are antithetical to the values of almost all concerned parents.
Well, they would win an award for the amount of time you say punk in one sentence anyway, if nothing else.
I counted at least 6 there, I think, Mark.
Yeah.
And former 13th Floor Elevators frontman Rocky Erickson turned up at the Whiskey with a new band, The Aliens, sort of an ageing celebrity lookalike band, it says here, and played a brilliant set that hit unheard of heights with a blues song about a nasty beast coming to your room. Also spotted there in the crowd were the Cramps and the Psychedelic Furs. Rocky Erickson, of course, he went through a really, really difficult time. He came back, made some great records, and then the tribute started sort of coming in, didn't they? People started acknowledging him as a big influence.
Yeah, he had electroshock therapy, didn't he, when he was a youngster, which obviously derailed him for a large part of his life. A really tragic story.
Yeah, of course it is. So from the tragic to this, a New York entrepreneur has just invented rock and roll hot pants. Basically, underpants with a 2-inch speaker sewn into them to let you feel the beat in your seat, according to the ad campaign. The inventor hit upon the Sony Walkman for the comatose when a ceiling speaker he was inventing fell down from above and landed. Well, you get the idea. He turned his talents to inventing pulsating pants. The only problem so far is bulk. You have to plug your thighs into a nearby sound system before the good vibrations start happening. I mean, we've all done it, haven't we? But I mean, it's an interesting. Well, it isn't even an interesting thing. It's a curious thing.
Well, I was just going to wonder where the headphone jack goes. I was just wondering.
Oh, I wish if I could go back in time, I'd ask.
Okay, mate. Well, you can't do that, can you?
No, I can't. There's only one way to go, though. Really, isn't there?
ESG.
That's right.
You're no good. And I once saw at the Hacienda, as I remember, ESG, Emerald Sapphire Gold, is it, with You're No Good, and somebody that I used to see in this studio, actually, Mr. Rob Hughes, who now has moved to a different country.
I have. Although we'll be catching up tomorrow, won't we?
We will, mate. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Actually, it's rained here all day today. It reminds me of living back in Manchester, really.
Oh, you cheeky thing.
Oh, so we're looking at Sounds, 3rd of October 1981. Were they good, ESG, at the Hacienda?
Yeah, they were. They were great.
Great. New albums this week, Throbbing Gristle's Greatest Hits. Obviously, the legend on the front of this LP, it says, entertainment through pain might be seen as a refusal to rewrite public stupidity. Throbbing Gristle thought for themselves. They never stopped hoping the public might join in that pursuit. Of course, Greatest Hits is no more than indulgence of personal fetishes. Play this LP like a Rubik's Cube and annoy the next door neighbour. A great title. I mean, 20 jazz funk greats was the one, wasn't it? When they're all dressed as in sort of very sort of MOR knitwear on top. Was it Beachy Head, I think? Is that what it's taken?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was.
I think it might have been. So, cover stars this week, Human League. Dave McCulloch goes to meet them at the Columbia Hotel in London, where he's greeted by Joe Callis. In the end, he sits down at a table with Joanne and Suzanne and Phil and Adrian Wright. And it's a bit of an awkward interview. He says the Human League proved almost certainly the most serious and self-conscious group I'd ever talked to. It was a bit like interviewing Harvey Smith, every question getting a terse, abrupt, decidedly northern response. So if people who don't remember Harvey Smith, he was a show jumper, wasn't he? Who just used to swear a lot and and give the V's.
Very gruff, yeah.
Yeah, he was, very much. Success has been a while coming, they say, but they were always sure they'd break through with one single. They just didn't know when that would be. So at this point, Love Action, which we heard before, is in the charts. And Dave McCulloch says they walk the fine line between subversive new pop and knowing new MOR. Adrian Wright says, we seem to have gone through all these different stages. First, we were the industrial band, then we were the electronic band, then the fathers of the futurists. I think we'll survive whatever the flavour of the month is. I was just wondering, did you kind of come across them a lot in your sort of fall travels?
Yes, but I never saw them in the, in inverted commas, pop lineup. I've never seen that lineup, and I wished I had, and I will still hope to at some point in time. But yeah, they were part and parcel of that so-called gig of the century at the Lyceum, one of the many Sunday night shows that Straight Music used to put on. And we played with Generation X, and we did another one where we headlined with maybe Felt opening for us. But the one that was kind of most famous, maybe infamous, there was Stiff Little Fingers and Human League and the Mekons and ATV and Gang of Four, and they played that night and they were great. I saw them at the Russell Club, the Factory, and I seem to remember seeing them at the Futurama Festival, the first one, but my mind could be playing tricks with me there. But yeah, they were great. And the funny thing is though, of course, I don't know, like they started out, as they say, industrial, and then being kind of like the electro but dark side of it, and then the pop band. And you just wonder whether they thought they should be taken more seriously. But when you created an album like Dare, the perfect pop album of the time, then, you know, you're going to be on top of the pops, you're going to be in smash hits, and your profile is going to change, innit? So to keep the kind of really dark and quiet industrial face of the band, probably quite difficult, innit?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I'd seen that really early kind of incarnation, because they were sort of edgy, weren't they? And obviously they've been listening to a lot of Noi and Kraftwerk and all the rest of it. So it was quite an event, I believe.
Yeah, they were great.
But you're talking about, you know, obviously Dare is coming out, it's in the charts. Phil Oakey says what the group is now, very commercial, is what we actually always wanted to be. We never wanted to be way out. He says we don't like any of that stuff. I've never heard an Au Pairs or Raincoats album, for example. We listen to Michael Jackson or ABBA. The interesting thing here is that comes out, they were one of the first bands to sort of publicly admit that they were really in awe of ABBA, which at this point, early 80s, it wasn't something that was naturally admitted. We know now, of course, they're a classic band doing classic pop songs, you know, but for a band like Human League to come out and say stuff like the Human League always wanted to be ABBA, and they're not being sort of, you know, there's no other kind of edge to this, they're being straight up. They've always been our heroes. They've never had any music press coverage at all, but if you actually sit down and listen to their records, they're absolutely fantastic. Fair point.
Do you know, there was a review for Love Action in one of the papers as well, and I do remember it said this is the music that Iggy Pop should be making. For Love Action. And this is Phil talking. It's kind of got an Iggy ring to it, but anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Gigs this week, we've got Nico, supported by the Nightingales at the North London Polytechnic. Depeche Mode at Fagin's in Manchester, early days for them. Bauhaus at Night Moves in Glasgow. You got Donovan at Southport Theatre, Dead Kennedys at the Lyceum in London, Ramones at Hammersmith Palais, the Freshies, as mentioned before, at Manchester Umist, Hawkwind at Liverpool Empire, Reckless Eric at the Nag's Head in High Wycombe, The Clash at Manchester Apollo, the Polecats at Bristol Polytechnic, Blue Orchids at the Mooch Club in London, part of the Whiskey A Go-Go on Wardour Street, Carleen Carter at Bristol Polytechnic, King Crimson at Friars Aylesbury. This was the sort of reconstituted lineup, wasn't it? Sort of known as Discipline, I think, for a while, and Tony Levin and all the rest of it. It's just a great band. Adrian Belew as well.
He always has a great band around him, though, Fripp, doesn't he?
Definitely. And Bow Wow Wow at Hull Tower Cinema. On the live front, you've got Alternative TV at Dingwalls. Mark Perry reforms the band after sort of splitting the band 2 or 3 years earlier, only for them to more or less call it quits straight afterwards. Sounds Johnny Waller can't believe it. He says to have an ATV back from the dead at all, let alone this refreshed, this vigorous, this entertaining, was nothing short of miraculous, certainly more so than anyone had any right to expect. So I was staggered to then be told it was their final gig. Mark had taken the bravest decision. He'd quit. He explained later, he said it had gone too far. It was too much like a pub rock band for me, well rehearsed and everything. I had fun. I enjoyed the 45 minutes on stage, but I didn't enjoy playing with the people in the band. They were like session men. Waller says, I bought him a drink, maybe I shook his hand as well, and then I gave him a lift home, and that was that. So it's a straight reformation and then one gig.
He's always been a reluctant kind of musician, in a way, Mark.
Of course he has, yeah. And live quickly as well, Nico here at the venue in London, where Chris Burkham isn't impressed. Imagine this, he says, a wailing, discordant sound that was tinged with dashes of Eastern esoterica, an intriguing noise that soon dissolved into a slummy swamp of boredom, a dull noise. Well, do you know, he could say, OK, I don't like it, but he's going to see Nico. What really are you expecting? You're not going to get the party hits.
It wasn't going to be an ease up, was it?
No,
no.
Definitely wasn't.
I saw Nico playing and the Blue Orchids, funnily enough, for a backing band, and I saw her on several occasions, actually. She was great, so yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and also, didn't you sit on a cloak once?
Oh, something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, rafters in Manchester.
OK, have we got time for a quick Jaws?
No.
Fine. I didn't want to say it anyway.
OK, mate. So, we need to go. We need to pay the associates now, kitchen person. Thanks very much to you, Bob, and everybody else involved in the programme. Gideon is next. We're back on Monday night with Posy live in session. Have a good weekend, everybody. And, ta-ta. Ta-ta, Bobbert.
Ta-ta.
BBC Six Music.
Prepare to exit the parallel universe.
Marc Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.